I snorted. Civilized? You want to talk about being civilized? Was it civilized to do it with wife behind my back and goat? Holy God, this is animal. But let's start from the beginning, right after your subscription to this channel. I stood there in the kitchen, my hand gripping the edge of the counter so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. Victoria had just left, her perfume lingering in the air, a scent that used to comfort me but now made my stomach churn. I'll get the goat ready. Lawrence. The words burned in my mind. A goat. What the hell did that mean? I ran through possibilities. Some inside joke, a pet name, or was it code for something more sinister? I loosened my tie, feeling like I couldn't breathe. This was Victoria, my wife. The woman I'd built a life with, shared dreams with, and Lawrence. That smug bastard from down the street, always strutting around like he owned the place, flashing his wealth as if it made him better than everyone else. I poured myself a scotch, neat. The burn as it went down matched the fire building in my chest. I'm not an emotional man. I've built my career on being cold, calculated, but this felt like a punch to the gut. My mind raced back through the past few months, the late nights, the distracted looks, her sudden interest in her appearance. It all clicked into place now, forming a picture I didn't want to see. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through our shared calendar, charity galas, fundraisers, social events. How many of these had been real? How many times had she been with him instead? The scotch didn't help. I poured another, pacing the kitchen. I should have seen this coming. I'd been so wrapped up in work and climbing the corporate ladder. Had I pushed her away? No, that was bullshit. If she was unhappy, she should have talked to me. We're adults, for Christ's sake. I walked to the living room, our wedding photo prominently displayed on the mantel. Victoria's smile, radiant and full of promise. Was it all a lie? Had she ever really loved me? Or was I just a convenient stepping stone in her social climb? My phone buzzed. A text from Johnson, my associate at the firm. Need those briefs by morning, Alex? You good? Work. Always work. I typed back a quick affirmative. At least that was something I could control, something that made sense. But as I sat down at my desk, the documents in front of me blurred. All I could see was Victoria's face, imagining her with Lawrence, his hands on her, his lips. I slammed my fist on the desk, sending papers flying. This wasn't me. I don't lose control. I'm Alexander fucking Hartley. I've taken down Fortune 500 companies without breaking a sweat. I've stared down CEOs and made them crumble. And yet here I was, undone by a text message about a goat. I took a deep breath, straightening my tie. No, this wasn't going to break me. If Victoria thought she could play me for a fool, she had another thing coming. And Lawrence, that arrogant prick, was about to learn what happens when you cross me. I sat in my car, parked a discreet distance from Lawrence's gated estate. My knuckles were white as I gripped the steering wheel, watching Victoria's car disappear down his private driveway. The familiar rage I'd been suppressing all day threatened to boil over. Fucking hell, I muttered, slamming my palm against the brake dashboard. I'd followed her across town, expecting, hoping, really, that there was some innocent explanation. But seeing her pull up to Lawrence's place with such familiarity crushed any remaining doubt. My wife was having an affair with that smug bastard. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This wasn't just about Victoria's betrayal anymore. It was about Lawrence, too. That arrogant prick who'd probably been laughing behind my back this whole time. You want to play games? I growled. Let's play. I stepped out of the car, my grip tightening around the bat's handle. The night was quiet, that expensive gated neighborhood silence where you could hear your own thoughts too clearly. But my head was filled with a different kind of noise. The pounding rhythm that echoed along with each step towards Lawrence's estate. I slipped through the side gate unnoticed. How typical. Lawrence probably didn't even bother to lock it, too secure in his arrogance. The garden looked like a magazine spread. Manicured hedges, fountains, rose bushes, blooming perfectly. It all screamed wealth, perfection, nothing real. The kind of life Victoria always gravitated toward. Maybe always resented me for not giving her more of. The bat felt solid in my hand as I reached the back patio door, and to my utter fucking disbelief, it was unlocked. Of course, I stepped inside, shoes silent on their polished obsidian floors. The muted laughter reached me first, soft, easy, intimate. My muscles tensed as I moved down the hallway, hearing not just their voices now, but something else, something odd, a bleating. I turned on my phone to record everything. What the fuck? The living room opened up before me, grand and self-indulgent as you'd expect for a guy like Lawrence. And there they both were, naked, entwined. Lawrence on top of Victoria on his stupid gleaming leather couch, their bodies moving together like something out of some awful cliché. Fucking Lawrence, sweating and grunting, barely aware of anything but himself. Victoria, her face turned away, her hair spilling down her back like she's posing for some Instagram spread, and then I saw it, a goat, this thing, just wandering around, bleating randomly, pacing near them, barely acknowledging the weirdest scene I had ever walked into. The animal made no sense, just like none of this goddamn moment made any sense. I froze, heart still hammering, but something, laughter honestly bubbling up inside me. This was some sick joke, right? Lawrence doing his business, stopping to attend to Victoria, like he was some god of fun while their third party, the literal goat, hung around waiting for. No irony involved here. The pompous, wealthy next-door douchebag was with a goat on some rotation in between funding my wife. I just stood there, holding that bat, and for some reason, I didn't charge at them right away. No, instead I took it in. This grotesque of farcy, Victoria sprawled under him, mourning like the did-ed puppet she was. Lawrence with that stupid grin spread wide like he'd won some competition. The goat wandering around, probably wondering how it got there. They didn't even notice me at first. I stepped forward, my grip tightening on the bat. The world seemed to slow down as I swung, channeling all my rage and betrayal into that single motion. The crack of wood meeting bone was oddly satisfying, followed by Lawrence's pathetic gasp as he crumpled to the floor. Victoria's scream pierced the air, but I barely registered it. My eyes were fixed on Lawrence, watching him writhe in pain, clutching his side. Good, I wanted him to hurt. "Alex, what are you doing?" Victoria shrieked, fumbling with a silk throw to cover herself. I ignored her, circling Lawrence like a predator. He looked up at me, eyes wide with fear and pain. Gone was the smug, arrogant prick who thought he could fuck my wife and get away with it. "Please, Alex, I can explain," Lawrence wheezed, trying to crawl away. I let out a cold laugh. "Explain? What's there to explain, Lawrence? You're fucking my wife? In front of a goddamn goat, no less." I'd say that's pretty self-explanatory. I raised the bat again, relishing the way Lawrence flinched. "You know, I always knew you were a piece of shit, but this is a new low even for you." Victoria was sobbing now, babbling incoherently about how sorry she was, how it didn't mean anything. Her words washed over me like white noise. All I could focus on was Lawrence, the man who betrayed me, who'd taken what was mine. "Get up," I growled at him. When he didn't move fast enough, I grabbed his arm, yanking him to his feet. He stumbled, doubled over in pain. I said, "Get up." Lawrence straightened as much as he could, his face pale and sweaty. "Alex, come on, man. We can talk about this, like civilized people." I snorted. "Civilized? You want to talk about being civilized? Was it civilized to do it with wife behind my back to make a fool of me? And, goat, holy God, this is animal." I hit him hard in the ribs, sending him stumbling back against the wall, then on the floor. The goat bleated in alarm, scampering away to hide behind a leather armchair. "You know what, Lawrence? I'm done talking. I'm done playing by the rules. You and you. Victoria, you've shown me exactly what kind of people you really are." I stood over Lawrence's crumpled form, a dark satisfaction blooming in my chest. This pathetic mess on the floor was the man Victoria had chosen. This weak, sniveling excuse for a lover. I couldn't help but let out a bitter, "Is this really what you wanted, Victoria? This joke?" Lawrence groaned, trying to crawl away. The sight only fueled my contempt. He was nothing more than a punchline now, a cautionary tale about crossing the wrong man. The goat let out another bleat, as if to punctuate the absurdity of it all. I smirked, raising the bat again. "You know, Lawrence, I always thought you were full of hot air. Let's see how well you can run your mouth with a broken leg." I brought the bat down hard on his. The sickening crack that followed was like music to my ears. Lawrence howled in agony, clutching at his now useless limb. "Oops," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like you won't be sneaking into any more bedrooms for a while." Victoria was sobbing now, begging me to stop. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. This whole situation was just too ridiculous, too darkly comical to take seriously anymore. "You know what's funny, Lawrence? I asked, circling him like a shark. You thought you were so clever, didn't you? Screwing my wife, living it up in your tacky mansion. But look at you now, can't even stand up to face me like a man. I kicked him onto his back, wanting to see the fear in his eyes. He didn't disappoint, staring up at me with a mixture of terror and pain that was almost comical. Please, he whimpered. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. I couldn't help but laugh. You're right, about that at least. I stared down at Lawrence, his body twitching with each ragged breath. The bat felt heavy in my hand, but my grip didn't loosen. I watched his face twitch in agony, blood spilling from his split lips. His once confident, cocky grin was gone, replaced by cries and moans of pain. It should have stirred something in me, anger or satisfaction, anything, but I just felt nothing. I brought the bat down again, harder this time, the sound of bone crunching filling the air. His leg turned at an unnatural angle. The bastard howled, but it might as well have been background noise. More blood, more helpless struggling, more pointless sound. Victoria's screaming was more grating. She kept repeating the same thing over and over. Stop, stop, Alex, please stop, you'll kill him. There was a desperation in her voice. Was that for Lawrence, or was she afraid of what was next for her? I drove the bat into Lawrence's side, feeling the impact reverberate up my arms. His scream was more of a gurgle now, like something clogged in the back of his throat. She rushed toward me, then trying to pull at the bat, and I let her, but I still held the damn thing. Her nails dug into my arm as she tried to yank it away. Desperate. Alex, please. Her voice was frantic. She almost sounded like she cared. I blinked, looking at her for the first time in what felt like hours. Her mascara ran streaks down her cheeks, blonde hair sticking to her face from sweat or tears, maybe both. A beautiful mess, but still a mess. Her green eyes always calculating, always aware of where she stood in the room, locked on mine. She wanted an answer, some sign that I'd heard her. I shrugged her off, stepping back, the bat hanging loosely at my side. What now, Victoria? My voice sounded different, like it wasn't my own, detached, like I was watching someone else. You scared I'll hit you next? Her lips quivered. This isn't you, she whispered, but her hands stayed up, defensive. I leaned down, my eyes locking with Lawrence's, as he lay there broken and whimpering on the floor. The satisfaction I felt was cold, calculated. This pathetic excuse for a man had dared to betray me, to soil what was mine. Now he'd pay the price. Listen carefully, Lawrence, I said, my voice low and menacing. If you even think about calling the cops or trying to get back at me, I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly what happened here. Tonight, his eyes widened in fear, and I saw the realization dawning on him. That's right, I continued, a cruel smile playing on my lips. Every sordid detail of your little adventure with the goat will be splashed across every tabloid and social media platform. Your reputation, your career, everything you've built, it'll all come crashing down. Do you know what people in prison do to animal abusers? Lawrence tried to speak, but only a pained groan escaped his lips. I didn't need to hear his words. The terror in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. He understood the gravity of the situation. He knew he was trapped. You have too much to lose, don't you, Lawrence? I taunted. Your precious reputation, your fancy job, your social standing, gone in an instant if word gets out. And trust me, it will if you so much as breathe a word about tonight. I straightened up, surveying the scene. Victoria stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and horror. She hadn't uttered a word since her futile attempt to stop me. Good, let her see the consequences of her actions. My eyes fell on the goat, huddled in the corner of the room. Its wide, frightened eyes met mine, and for a moment I felt a twinge of something, pity, disgust. This innocent creature had been dragged into our twisted human drama used as a prop in their depraved game. Without a word, I walked over to the goat. It flinched as I approached, but didn't run. I grabbed its leash, gently tugging it towards. The animal complied, seemingly eager to leave this place of chaos and pain. As I led the goat towards the door, I spared one last glance at Victoria. She stood there, broken and lost, her perfect world shattered around her. For a brief moment, I wondered if she ever truly loved me, or if I had just been a convenient stepping stone in her social climb. But it didn't matter now. None of it did. I walked out of the house, the goat trotting obediently beside me. Victoria made no move to stop me, said nothing as I left. Perhaps she understood that this was the end. that there was no coming back from this. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, a stark contrast to the heated violence of moments ago. The goat bleated softly, and I found myself absurdly comforted by the sound. At least this innocent creature could be saved from the mess we'd made. As I walked towards my car, leading the goat, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Everything had changed, yet I felt more in control than ever. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. I drove home in silence, the goat sitting awkwardly in the back seat. Its occasional bleats were the only sound, breaking the eerie calm that had settled over me. The rage that had consumed me earlier had burned away, leaving behind a cold, detached clarity. As I navigated the familiar streets, my mind felt surprisingly empty. I had seen enough, I had done enough. The life I had shared with Victoria was over, and I didn't feel the need to hear her explanations or excuses. What could she possibly say that would change anything, that would erase the image of her and Lawrence, tangled together on that ridiculous couch? I glanced in the rearview mirror, catching sight of the goat's bewildered eyes. It was almost comical, this living, breathing evidence of their depraved little adventure. But I felt no urge to laugh. There was nothing funny about any of this. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized there was nothing left to salvage. The house loomed before me, no longer a home, but just another asset to be divided. I would file for divorce and move on, clean, clinical, just like closing a difficult case. I got out of the car and opened the back door. The goat hesitated, clearly confused by its strange, "Come on," I said, my voice sounding oddly flat to my own ears. "This is your stop." Leading the animal to the backyard, I felt a strange sense of finality. There was no point in looking back. Victoria, Lawrence, our marriage, it was all in the past now, and I was ready to face whatever came next. I stood in my driveway staring at the goat that it had become an unexpected part of my life. Its dark eyes looked back at me, unaware of the chaos it had witnessed. I sighed, knowing I couldn't keep it here. It deserved better than to be a constant reminder of Victoria's betrayal. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, stopping at Charles's name. He was an old friend from law school who'd inherited a sprawling estate outside the city. If anyone could take in a random goat, it'd be him. The phone rang twice before Charles picked up. "Alex, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "Charles," I said, my voice steady despite the absurdity of what I was about to ask. "I have an unusual favor to request." There was a pause on the other end. "All right, I'm intrigued. What's up?" I looked at the goat, which was now chewing on some grass near my feet. "I need a home for a goat. It's a long story, but I was hoping you might be able to take it in at your place." Charles chuckled. "A goat? Well, that's certainly not what I expected. But yeah, I've got plenty of space here. Might even live in things up a bit. When do you want to bring it over? How about tomorrow?" I suggested, relief washing over me. "Works for me. I'll make sure we've got a space set up for our new friend." The next day, I loaded the goat into my car and made the hour-long drive to Charles's estate. As we pulled up the long driveway, I saw Charles waiting for us on the front porch. "So this is the mysterious goat," Charles said, as I got out of the car. He walked over, eyeing the animal curiously. "Got a name for it?" I shook my head. "No name, it's better that way." Charles raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. "Fair enough, let's get him settled in." We walked the goat to a fence that are near the barn. It was spacious, with plenty of grass, and even a small shelter. As I handed the leash to Charles, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. "Thanks for this, Charles," I said, watching as the goat began to explore its new home. "I appreciate you not asking too many questions." Charles clapped me on the shoulder. "That's what friends are for, Alex. Besides, I trust you've got your reasons. The little guy will have a good life here." I nodded, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. "I'm sure he will." As we walked back to my car, Charles finally broke and asked, I have to ask, how did you end up with a goat?" I paused, considering how much to reveal. Let's just say it was caught up in a situation it didn't deserve to be in. "I'm making sure it gets a fresh start." Charles studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Well, whatever happened, it's clear you're doing right by the animal. That counts for something." I got into my car, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. "Take care, Charles, and thanks again." As I drove away, I watched the estate shrink in my rearview mirror. The goat would have a peaceful life here, far from the twisted nightmare it had been a part of. I had done what I could for it. Now it was time to finish the rest of my business. I woke up early the next morning, my mind already clear and focused on the task ahead. There was no hesitation, no lingering doubts. I knew exactly what needed to be done. I called my firm's top divorce attorney, Sarah, as soon as her office opened. "I need to see you immediately," I said, my voice steady and emotionless. "It's about filing for divorce." Sarah, ever the professional, didn't miss a beat. "Of course, Alexander, I can squeeze you in at 10 a.m. Is that suitable?" "Perfect," I replied, already reaching for my jacket. The drive to the office was uneventful. The city bustled around me, but I felt disconnected from it all. My world had shifted, but life went on regardless. Sarah was waiting for me when I arrived, a file already opened on her desk. "Alexander," she greeted me, her tone sympathetic but not pitying. "I'm sorry about the circumstances, but I assure you we'll handle this efficiently." I nodded, taking a seat across from her. "That's exactly what I want, Sarah. Quick, clean, and final." We dove into the details immediately. I laid out the facts of Victoria's infidelity, my voice never wavering. Sarah took notes, her pen scratching against the paper, the only sound in the room. "No dramatic confrontations," I stated firmly. "No emotional discussions. I want this done as clinically as possible." Sarah looked up at me, her eyes searching my face. "Are you sure you don't want to attempt any reconciliation?" Sometimes in these situations, I cut her off with a wave of my hand. Victoria destroyed everything that mattered. There's no point in dragging this out. She nodded, understanding. "All right then, we'll proceed with the divorce filing immediately." As we went through the paperwork, my phone buzzed incessantly. I glanced at it once. A string of messages from Victoria. Tearful pleas, desperate explanations. I silenced the phone without reading them. "She'll probably try to contact you," Sarah warned. "It's common in these situations," I shrugged. "She can try, I won't be responding." We spent the next few hours going over assets, discussing potential settlements. It was all business numbers on a page. The life I had built with Victoria reduced to figures and legal jargon. As I left Sarah's office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The process had begun. There was no going back now, but I didn't want to. Victoria was my past, and I was already looking toward the future. Over the next few days, Victoria's attempts to reach me became more frantic. Emails flooded my inbox, voicemails filled my phone. I deleted them all without listening, or she was no longer a part of my life, and I had no interest in her explanations. Or a week after filing for divorce, I found myself driving out to Charles' estate. The sprawling property came into view, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. As I parked and got out of the car, Charles came to greet me, a warm smile on his face. "Alexander, good to see you, my friend. How are you holding up?" I clasped his hand, grateful for his discretion. "I'm doing all right, Charles. Thanks again for taking in the goat." He waved off my thanks. "It's no trouble at all. Come, let me show you how he's in." Settling in, we walked towards the barn, the sun warm on our backs. As we approached the fenced area, I saw the goat grazing peacefully, looking completely at home. "He's taken to the place quite well," Charles said, leaning against the fence. "Seems to enjoy the company of the other animals." I watched the goat for a moment, feeling an unexpected surge of emotion. This creature, unwittingly caught up in the destruction of my marriage, now had a chance at a peaceful life. "I'm glad," I said softly. "He deserves it." Charles turned to me, his expression curious but kind. "You know, Alexander, you never did tell me the full story about this goat." I met his gaze, considering. Finally, I said, "Let's just say he was caught up in a situation he didn't deserve to be in, but now he's free, just like me." Charles nodded, understanding in his eyes. He didn't press for more details, and I was grateful for that. As we walked back to my car, I felt a sense of closure. The goat was safe and content, and I was ready to move on, to finish the rest of my business and leave the twisted wreckage of my old life far behind. Hey everyone, if you found this story gripping and want to hear more crazy ones like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have your own wild stories to share or ideas you'd like us to bring to life, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching.